Welcome to another episode of Comedy Wham Presents with me, your host Valerie, and sometime kitty co-hosts Miss Purrington and Mookie. ComedyWham.com is your place to go for features about all Austin comedy. In addition to podcasts, Comedy Wham brings you articles, album reviews, our advice column, my Austin Chronicle articles about the Austin comedy scene, our listing of festivals from across the country and the world, and our FPIA contest page is live tracking the 2024 contest. This episode is coming out on the night of finals. Very exciting stuff. Our most popular feature is our events page for live comedy shows in Austin, Houston, and DFW, where 100% of the entries you see come from comics and producers. Click the Submit a Show button from the top of the homepage or events page to fill out the survey to get your show listed. It's free and easy. Tag us on your posts and we'll share your show promo to our Instagram followers, and we also offer paid promo boosts. Want to support these resources we provide? You can donate to Comedy Wham on PayPal, Venmo, or even Patreon. Click the Support CW icon on our homepage to see the ways that you can help us. Our podcast was launched in 2016 to bring you funny people and their stories. As a fan, I like to delve into a comic's background and motivations, and will usually take a detour along the way. Consider the interview a way for you to get to know the folks that make the comedy scene as fascinating off stage as it is on stage. If you like this podcast, please rate and review us. Today, we are talking to somebody that you might have seen in TV commercials. He's been a perennial favorite on Roast Battle. He's a regular at LA's Comedy Store. He's got writing credits on so many. We've got HBO's Crashing, Discovery Channel's BattleBots reboot, Fox's MasterChef and MasterChef Junior, Comedy Central's roasts of Rob Lowe, Bruce Willis, Alec Baldwin. He is the host of Wrong, a fucked up game show, or depending on the PG rating, it might be bleeped out there. He just wrapped up a headlining weekend at the beloved Velveeta Room, and he is recording, well, let's just say his debut album, Good Guy with a Gun, came out, I didn't do my homework on that one. 2020, there you go, live fact-checking. And he is recording his second album in his hometown of Dallas, Texas, this coming weekend, which is also, when this comes out, he will have just recorded his second album. Timing is just a function in our
I hope
brains.
you were able to make it if you're listening to this.
Right. And if you weren't, plan to buy both his first and upcoming album. And now you've already heard him. Comedy Wham presents our guest, Jay Light.
Hi.
Hello.
Thanks for having me, Valerie.
Yeah, absolutely.
We have been circling this for years.
Years, literally years. I think you may be the world record of trying to make this happen.
I was trying to think before I came out today how long it's actually been since.
Yeah.
Because I remember you first got in touch with me, and it's been at least 2 years.
Yeah.
And you were saying 5 years, and I actually think that might be more accurate, because I'm thinking, I'm like, maybe you hit me up before, it might have been before COVID.
I think
it must
so,
have been.
because I've known about you. Like I was saying, I first saw you at that Roast Battle tour that came through, but that was like probably 16, 17, 18 range.
That was, that first show was 2015.
Okay.
Oh, no, maybe 2014? Because I remember, because I was on the first 2 seasons of Roast Battle, and they did the touring shows. Yeah, that first one I think was 2015, because the second show, this is very memorable because I did it in Denver, and we taped that episode the night after the 2016 election.
Oh, boy.
So everybody, I remember, so that night was really weird, obviously, beforehand. Like, I was in West Hollywood. I was, like, watching the election with some friends, as you do.
Yeah.
And then I remember as soon as we figured out that Trump was going to win the election, we hung out for a little bit, and then stuff started to get people started having really tough times. My friend's girlfriend came over, and she started blaming all of us. I don't know why. I think I had my friend Tyler, who I co-host Wrong with. He did a Trump impression at the open mic we used to run for a while because it was like, it's just so ridiculous, and we were like, there's no way.
It's a caricature.
Of course, a caricature, yeah. But she was like, you normalize this, and we were like, okay, I'm gonna go home. And it was the quietest I've ever heard West Hollywood.
Wow.
Was walking back. And then the next morning in the airport, it was just a very weird energy in the air. And there were some of the other comics who were flying from LA to Denver to do the show. We were all just hanging out and being like, this is going to be an interesting show tonight. This is going to be real strange. So, yeah, I think that first time when I came to Cap City, that must have been 2015.
Okay. That makes sense, because I do feel like it was before I started my podcast. But then I noticed that you would come back through Austin and yeah.
Yeah, I tried to come back because the very first time I ever came to Austin to do any comedy, I want to say it was 2014, because they brought Roast Battle to South by Southwest for the first time that year. And I came with that crew. And then I tried to come back maybe once a year for a while. Yeah. And then now that the scene has grown more, now I've been trying to come back maybe twice a year.
Yeah.
Or even more if I can swing it. But
yeah.
This is my second time passing through in 2024. So it's nice to be back.
Yeah. Not too far from home.
No, not too far. It's really convenient. My family lives in the Dallas-Fort Worth area still. They live in Colleyville. Okay. And so I go visit them. And then my mom lets me borrow her car and drive it down here.
Nice.
Yeah. So it's very convenient. Yeah. I get a little bit of family time. I get a little bit of comedy time. It's all good.
Yeah. And now the comedy scene is just so wildly different than pre-COVID that so many more rooms.
Yeah, there's so much. I mean, there's so much stage time you can get every single night, which is great. I did, yes. And being a visitor, I think, does help. That always helps whenever you're leaving your home scene to go do shows in another city, because it's much easier to get on shows. But yesterday I was on 6 different shows.
Wow.
And 3 of those shows, actually, I think almost all of those shows I hadn't booked until maybe like a couple of days before the spot actually happened. So that was, it was just lovely to be able to do that much time.
And I've actually heard that is one change since the before times, that now it's easier to pick up like last minute. And like people used to be before COVID with the comedy shows, you plan it out ahead and you expect the promotion part to happen, and there's not the drop-offs that there happens now, because now if somebody drops off, that you have in a 1 mile radius, you have comics that are in the area that you can quickly say, hey, would you be able to fill in a spot on my show at this time frame? And it's easy enough to pick that up. So there's a lot more I guess fluidity with lineups, but with that comes opportunities. So
it was great. It's very cool to see the way the scene has continued to grow and evolve over time. It's very, and I love coming down here. I've always loved coming down here, but now I feel like there's an additional layer of community that I really appreciate. Because it's really nice to have a strong sense of community in a comedy scene.
Right.
And LA has a sense of community, but it's also so sprawling. I always say there's like 5 or 6 different scenes in the city of LA alone. So it's hard to sometimes, unless you're staying in like one area in LA, it's hard to feel that sense of community sometimes.
Sure. Do you keep pulse on what's happening in the Dallas comedy scene? Because I've always been wondered how the different scenes, obviously being here, I know exactly what's happened with the Austin scene, but has the Dallas scene changed a lot since COVID?
I mean, it seems like it's growing more, because I didn't really do a ton of comedy in Dallas when I was starting out. So I went to college in North Carolina, and that's where I started doing comedy. And I would come back, between semesters or for the summer, and I would do some open mics here and there, but I had kind of a hard time getting on stage. The scene was a little bit... I mean, it's, there's a little bit of, like, in any comedy scene, I think there's it's tougher for new comics to get a foothold sometimes if there's a scene that's very insular.
Yeah.
Like I remember I would go to the open mic at Hyenas Dallas sometimes, and there's one time that I always talk about where I signed up. I got there super early. I signed up to be like 5th or 6th on the list, and then I got bumped until like 1:30 in the morning. Oof. And so, I mean, that kind of turned me off from doing comedy in Dallas, but it does seem, I've been able to get up more times in Dallas now, and the comics there are great, and everybody's very nice, and it does seem like there's been a larger growth in the scene in Dallas and Fort Worth, and there's more clubs there now, which is crazy too. I mean, there's always so many clubs in the DFW area to begin with, but they've been opening. I think in the past couple of years, it seems like there's a new comedy club every time I go to town, which is great.
Yeah,
I feel like it's sort of the expansion. Naturally, like I think when Austin's scene started to explode, the satellite cities around it, like San Antonio and San Antonio and Dallas and Houston, because there's this place where you can go if you just want to drive a few hours.
Yeah.
You might as well make sure that you can build your chops up in your home scene.
Right. Yeah. Yeah, that makes sense. Well, Jay, believe it or not, I have an official icebreaker question that we're now 10 minutes into the recording. We're warmed up. So.
I love that you've got a clipboard. This is this is one of the most professional podcasts that I've ever done.
Oh, come on.
You got a clipboard, you got a sheet. This is nice. I like this.
Okay, are you ready for your icebreaker?
Hit me with the icebreaker.
Okay, one word to describe your past.
My past. Oh man, that's tough. I would say one word. Oh man. Oh geez. Oh man. Oh, I don't know why this is so hard. One word to describe my past. Okay, I have to stop. I'm gonna stop overthinking this. I'm gonna say silly. I think that seems right.
Okay.
Taking in the entirety of my past, I'm going to go with silly. I feel like that fits the best.
Yeah?
Yeah.
Was that your childhood? Were you a silly child?
Yeah, I was. I was a silly child. I did a lot of... I was not... I wouldn't say I was like a class clown type by any means, but I definitely was... I was the kind of kid, like, I was not, like, super disruptive in class, but I did also, like, I had my moments.
Yeah.
And it was one of those things where it's like, how sometimes when you're telling a joke for the first time and you're not sure if it's going to work, and then something unexpected does work. I had a lot of moments when I was a kid where, like, something that I said or did got a laugh, and I was like, I don't know why this is... What's funny about this thing that I did?
Yeah.
So I think that there's like something about the way that I think my timing is something that has always worked out, and like I guess the way I walk and the things that I do with my body are very weird. I've had a lot of people comment on like the way my wife in particular. I never sit normally at all ever. I'm very fidgety. I like to do like dumb puns and wordplay a lot in my act, and that's kind of all the writing work that I do too. There's a lot of puns and dumb wordplay and stuff. I'm totally down to go the silly route, but I also think that that's like more deeply ingrained in me than any of my proclivity for like darker or weirder jokes.
Yeah.
I think at the bare like my core. There's a deep core of silliness.
Yeah. Well, that's good.
Yeah.
Yeah, because you also, as you have developed, I'm sure, like keeping faith to that silliness is why you probably enjoy being a comic.
Yeah.
Just making yourself laugh and.
Oh yeah, I mean, I feel like I have to enjoy myself on stage more than anything else.
Yeah.
That's the thing that I was just talking to somebody about this the other night. I feel like one of the big changes for me as I started to do and develop my voice in comedy was learning to have fun when things weren't going well on stage. Because if you start bombing and you feel upset about it, then I don't handle that well. And I feel like there's something that gets it just sort of cascades into like a disaster. And sometimes there's just crowds that just aren't going to be on board with what you're doing on there. I've been in comedy long enough to know that's going to be the case. I've seen people who are great bomb, and it's inexplicable.
Yeah.
So I feel like the moments that I started to really figure out, like, I just have to enjoy myself and enjoy what I'm doing up here, then everything else is much smoother sailing from there.
Yeah.
And tapping into the silliness, I think, helps make that happen a little better.
Yeah. I read on your bio you went to school in North Carolina. I was not familiar with the college that you attended.
Yes, Elon University.
Okay,
yes.
Named after Elon Musk, naturally.
Naturally. No relation to the guy. He stole our name. That motherfucker.
What kind of school, and what was your intention with going to that school as far as what you were going to study?
So I went there. It's a tiny liberal arts school. It's got about 5,000 undergrad.
Okay.
And for context, my public high school that I went to had 2,000 students at it. My graduating class was almost 700 kids. So it felt sort of just like a slightly larger version of high school, which was nice. But I went there. I had, in high school, the things that really interested me, I was a speech and debate kid. I was a theater kid. Yeah, I did all of that stuff. I didn't think about being an actor or anything like some of my friends had done. But I did think like, maybe something in communications feels like it fits. I liked writing a lot. I was a good writer, and I figured that would be the way to go. So I was looking at places with good communication schools.
Okay.
And a lot of stuff in Texas naturally was popping up. But my counselor had a son who went to college in North Carolina, and so she had known about Elon from, the touring other places in North Carolina. She's like, they got a really interesting communication school. They're very hands-on. I think you'd like them. And then I went and visited, and I fell in love with it.
Nice.
And I was off to the races from there. That became my immediate first choice. And then,
Can I ask what your speech and debate events were?
Oh, yeah, of course.
As a debater kid,
What was your event?
I was a novice CXer for a while, and then my partner and I absolutely sucked at the varsity CX. So then I went into Lincoln Douglas, was terrible at it, and then went more into like the oratory and extemp events.
Okay.
And there I was pretty solid.
I bounced around a little bit. I started out in student congress.
Okay.
Which was fun, but I was good enough at talking to get out of prelims, but I never did super well in the finals. And then I switched to more interp events, so I was doing, I did a little bit of HI, I did a little duo and duet, I did some poetry and prose, and then my junior year I found original oratory, and that was the event for me.
Yeah.
That was the thing. I was a 2-time state finalist my junior and senior year.
That's awesome.
And that was like, this feels right.
Yeah.
This is great.
Yeah.
And that was also some of my first exposure to Austin, too, funny enough, because I came down, I did the UT speech and debate camp, UTNIF.
Yeah, my son did that.
It's the best.
It is.
Formative experience, being like a 16-year-old or 17-year-old running around on the drag and hanging out, and it was a great time. Yeah.
That's so cool. It's so ridiculous how, as you describe your life, at some point, Jay, and I'll just warn you, I will probably start crying because my son was a silly child. He was in speech and debate.
Oh, yeah.
His high school here had like 4,500 kids. He chose a small private school that the class size is like he just entered with like 500 freshmen.
Wow.
So he kind of went with this other direction of school, and I'm like, man, Jay's like a version of my kid. And now I'm sad because I just did the college drop off, and so you're my first post drop off interview, and all these running threads, and I'm like, damn it. So yeah, no, it's cool to hear like these parallels that run through so many people's lives. And okay, so but you didn't answer. So what I haven't asked is, so why did you start comedy, and what kind of scene did you start comedy in?
Oh yeah, so my senior year of high school, one of my best friends was interested in stand-up. I also was interested in stand-up. I watched a lot of Comedy Central. I did the Friday night stand-up. I watched a lot of that half hours that they would always air. And I never thought about like, oh, this is something you can do.
Yeah.
And then I remember my friend bought the Comedy Bible. Which is a classic, like, starting comedy book. And because he was interested in doing stand-up. And it said in the book you should get a buddy to do open mics with. You get a comedy buddy to, like, write with and work on stuff with. So I volunteered to be his comedy buddy. And then we both went to college in different states. So I was in North Carolina. He went to the University of Cincinnati.
Okay.
And we would do open mics in our respective cities, and we would get together on like a FaceTime once every week or a couple weeks and like run through jokes that we were working on. I started, so Elon is in the middle of nowhere in North Carolina, very, very teeny tiny town. They only had my freshman year, I think I maybe did 2 open mics total, and one of them was at a bar that doesn't exist anymore. That was a mixed open mic. I was the only person I think who did any stand-up at all. And then...
And how far did you have to travel for that?
I would just walk down the street.
Oh, okay.
That was at a bar that was like just off campus.
Okay, well that's good.
Yeah. And the only reason I went to it, there was a kid in my dorm who wanted to go... As you do at an open mic, he wanted to go play some acoustic guitar covers of songs. So I went with him. Originally, I was going to be we were going to do Hey Ya by Outkast together as an acoustic guitar cover. Very, very liberal arts college of us. Yeah. And then I was like, oh, I have a bunch of jokes in this moleskin notebook that I've been writing for like 6 months. Why not just try them here? And I did 10 minutes. And I don't remember how it went specifically. I don't think I recorded it at all, but I do remember feeling really good after it. And I was like, okay, cool. So it felt like once I popped that cherry of doing the open mic for the first time, then I was like, okay, we can start figuring this out a little bit more. And then I started really taking it seriously my junior year of college. I had a car at that point. And so I could drive. So where I went to college in the middle of the state was close enough to Greensboro and then the Triangle, Raleigh, Durham, and Chapel Hill. So those both had scenes. Yeah. So Greensboro has a club called the Idiot Box, and they also had some open mics. And then Raleigh and Durham and Chapel Hill all had a set of open mics of some kind. And then there's a club in Raleigh. There's a club in Chapel Hill. So I was going there and doing stuff a little bit more regularly. A little bit maybe... I would try and get up at least once a week if I could, once I started really caring. Yeah. I started an open mic... Or not an open mic. I started a show on campus. I found a bar that would let me do a monthly comedy show, which is cool. And... enough people started to find out that I did stand up that they, like, fraternities and sororities would like have me do events for them. I had a friend of mine one time who was like, it's my birthday, I'm having a bunch of girls over to pregame at my apartment. Do you want to do stand up for us for like 20
Hilarious.
minutes? And I was like, yeah, sure, great. So yeah, the scene it was a small scene, but there were people who I really, really enjoyed watching in North Carolina. I'm good friends. One of my best friends is a guy who I met when I was in North Carolina. He moved to LA around the same time that I did, and it's just, it's fun to see like the small scene continue to thrive and have some legacy as time goes on.
Very cool.
Yeah.
Very cool. So by your junior year then, when things are picking up some momentum, are you thinking, oh, career versus you've got this degree that you're building up? Are you starting to like now realize, oh, I might actually be able to pursue this as more than just a passing hobby?
Yeah, I feel like at that point I had gotten to a phase where I was actively thinking like, okay, I definitely want to pursue doing comedy. I want to pursue. I loved stand up enough where I was like, this feels like it's the engine that drives all of my other creative output.
Yeah.
And I was a film major. That was technically called Media Arts and Entertainment. It was like film, TV, radio, basically.
All right.
And so I knew, I was like, okay, I have this degree that I'm pursuing, so I should probably go somewhere that makes sense to try and like get jobs in that degree, so that way I can maybe do open mics and stuff at night. So it was either LA or New York. I chose LA and basically just moved there straight after graduation.
Okay.
And the plan at the time was I'm going to get, PA jobs or whatever. I applied, the first job I ever applied for was a director's assistant job on an indie film. They wound up hiring somebody else, but they brought me in as a PA, so I was doing all sorts of random stuff for them. And I was like, cool, this is going to be what it is. And I rap and I go do open mics. And then I wound up getting a job at a comedy club in LA called Flappers that I think some people might know about. If you don't know about Flappers, imagine a comedy club that is themed around the 1920s. We love a comedy club with a theme. We love a themed restaurant. And yeah, I worked there for like a year, maybe a year and a half. And then I actually there were some comics from the Comedy Store who were regulars at the open mic at Flappers. And I was friendly with them. And then one of them was from Dallas. Do you know Jay Mandiam at all?
I don't.
So Jay is originally from Dallas, and he and I would always talk about Texas stuff. And then one day he came to the mic. He's like, hey, there's some openings at the store for door guys. I think you should audition. I think you'd be good for it. And I was like, oh, I'd love to. And then I'd been at that point hanging out at the Comedy Store. I was intimidated at first when I came to LA because I was like, I didn't even know about the Comedy Store until I was driving to Los Angeles. I remember I was on that long drive from it was a crazy summer. I went from North Carolina to Texas, and then I went up to Tennessee. I worked at Bonnaroo. I worked at a food truck at Bonnaroo, and I did a lot of drugs. And then I drove back to Dallas. I was on no drugs, and then I went back. I worked at a summer camp that I'd worked at for like 8 years, and then I drove back to Texas, and then I drove to LA. But on all of those drives that summer, I was listening to WTF with Mark Maron.
Okay.
And all of the episodes I picked were all episodes with old Comedy Store door guys or paid regulars.
Okay.
And so I was like, oh, this Comedy Store place sounds cool. And so then I went there and I fell in love with the place. And so I was like, as soon as somebody told me, oh, you should try and get a job here, I was like, oh, I would love to. That'd be great.
Yeah.
And then I got that job, and then that was the kind of the moment that it made, like it legitimized the comedy for my family, for me. Because they were already very, I wouldn't say averse, but they just didn't understand, I think, the path of even anything in entertainment, whether besides comedy. Right. They were both medical professionals, so it's a very different thing.
Right.
But they knew what the Comedy Store was because we lived in Southern California for a little bit when I was a kid, and they had been to the store. I was As soon as I got the job there, they were like, "Oh, okay, yeah, we know what that is."
So that's all it took.
That's
They know what
it
it
took.
is, and then that makes it legitimate.
Yeah. But yeah, and then I never used my degree ever again until I started getting television writing work. And then I was like, oh yeah, I remember some of this stuff that I learned in school.
That's hilarious that, you get this degree that's supposed to help you, but it's not until you've developed as in this other realm that the opportunities for the writing work, show up. Mm-hmm. And then you're like, oh yeah, the degree.
Yeah, I do a lot of stuff. Like my college has a presence in LA still. They have a summer program that they do, and then they do some like in the US study abroad programs where they bring a few kids each semester.
Yeah.
And sometimes I'll go and talk to the kids, or sometimes I have like an intern I can take on for a show I'm doing or something. And I get a lot of questions from people, even if they're not not a part of the program officially. I'm sort of one of the like comedy go-to people. If the people who work at Elon know, hey, somebody is interested in doing comedy, they basically like send them to me. Or sometimes it happens with TV writing too a little bit, but I always tell the kids, like, I had a very non-traditional career path, so I can't. My experience is almost certainly not going to be yours. Mm-hmm. Just a heads up for you. I had a really weird path to get to doing any of this stuff, so just take anything I say with as many grains of salt as you need.
Yeah. There is no degree apprenticeship type of formal program for this career.
No, I mean, there's paths that people tend to take for the writing stuff specifically, but like comedy is just so... Yeah. It's just so nebulous, and there really is no actual straight line path. There's barely even a curved line path. Everything kind of loops back around on itself. Yeah. It's like you're hiking. You have to just be like somebody who has a machete, and you're just like clearing the path as you go along, because you're going to get lost a lot along the way.
Yeah, that makes sense. That makes sense. All right. I want to ask you how far into your comedy career you made the decision to record your first album.
So I recorded that first album. We recorded it in 2019.
Okay.
And at that point, I'd been doing it actively for about 9-ish years, almost 10 years at that point. And so I had been thinking about it for a while, and I had enough material at that point that I really liked, and I had started to do longer sets. I was thinking, man, I'm getting really tired of some of this material. What do I do? Because I think for a long time, there had been this idea that I built up in my head of you only are allowed to record something when someone asks you to record something. And then I started to see more people doing the DIY or self-release thing. And I was like, oh, I didn't even think that was an option. I guess I can do that.
Yeah.
And I had been starting to prep. I had, at the very beginning of 2019, I started to put together some dates. And then I applied for the Edinburgh Fringe Festival, and I got in. And so I did the one thing I did as soon as I got that was like, all right, I'm going to record the hour that I do at Fringe as soon as I get back. So I booked a date to record it August 31st, 2019. And I ran my hour not quite every day at Fringe. I had a couple shows I had to cancel because nobody showed up. But I ran it 24 times out of the like 27 show dates.
Yeah.
And so at that point, it was just like totally ironclad. I felt really great about it, and then I put it down a couple days later. But I knew at the very beginning of 2019, I was like, this seems like it's about time, because I want to do something to get rid of this material, but I also don't want to like have no record of it. So I figured album's the best way to do it.
Yeah. Was that your first Edinburgh?
It was.
Have you gone back?
I did. I actually just got back.
Oh, wait. I think I probably knew this. I followed too many comics. Sorry.
No, I was there. I did a half run this time, but I took Wrong out there. I took the game show out there.
Okay,
So we did
cool.
11 days of shows.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was great.
Yeah.
We had a blast. They love game shows at Fringe. They love format shows at Fringe.
Ah, nice.
Because there's so many regular comedy shows that are happening. I think they need something to break up the monotony of just seeing a bunch of different stand-up shows where people are working through some sort of a personal trauma. Which is, that's a lot of Fringe shows. That's just kind of how it goes. No shade, but that is, I think, the majority of what you expect a Fringe, quote-unquote, Edinburgh Fringe show to be. So I think people are like, we literally would have people's heads turn as we're flying, and we said, dark comedy game show, and then they would turn as soon as they hit the game show, and then they take a flyer, and then you go, oh, this actually sounds fun. Yeah. So they really like that. I'm glad they were fans. Hopefully we can take it back next year for a full run.
Yeah.
But I also just heard, I don't know if you said, because Oasis is coming back.
Yeah.
And they have a show date that is during Fringe next to Edinburgh. And it is jacking up all of the hotel and Airbnb prices like crazy.
Oh, no.
Yeah. So I've already seen a bunch of people posting in like the Edinburgh Fringe Facebook groups that I'm in, just lamenting like it's already pricey enough to do the Fringe as it is.
Yeah.
Like most people do not make money at the Fringe. I definitely, the first year I was lucky. I didn't quite break even, but I came close. But this year I definitely lost money.
Yeah.
And I can only imagine next time there are going to be so many more people losing money just because what are you going to do when the price of your lodging is quintupled for 4 days?
Yeah. Yeah.
It's nuts.
Ugh. Wow. Damn it, Oasis.
Damn it, Oasis. Break up again.
Yeah.
Why did you guys get back together?
I mean, there's time, and then, people can rebook.
God, I hope so.
Cheaper rates.
I hope there's time. I hope you dry up, Oasis. Got them.
There you go.
Got their asses.
Okay, going back to that first album, we'll do this and then we'll do our little intermission game.
Okay.
Good Guy with a Gun kind of plays on the unexpected that when you walk on stage, people are thinking, oh, this is going to be a clean-cut comedy set, but then there's the wordplay, there's a little bit of toying with dark comedy. How did you develop the idea of calling, and plus the cover is also a little cartoonish.
Yes.
But the title, Good Guy with a Gun, we all know the phrase. How did you settle on that as your album title?
As my album title. So while I was doing the set at Fringe, I had already had a lot of gun control jokes in there. I remember I developed this bit after there's that shooting in Dallas in like 2016 where it was a one guy who shot a bunch of cops.
Right. And
I remember there was something, because that happened in Dallas, it felt very close to home for me. And so I definitely was like, and I started writing these gun control jokes that worked. And I was like, cool, I like this. This is fun to toy around with. Because it was also jokes where it's like, I remember one of the jokes on the album is something like, listen, there's this guy in Dallas who just shot a bunch of cops. And I get it, because sometimes I want to kill cops, but that's why I play Grand Theft Auto. Grand Theft Auto is just a cop-killing simulator for me. But there was like a chunk on the album that had gun control stuff, and then I was working it out in Scotland, and somebody came up to me one night after my show, and I had missed this because I think it might have happened. It might have happened during the show or like before the show. I didn't see the news, but there was that shooting in El Paso, and I remember after that I was like, "This is really interesting." That's one of the only pieces of news that comes this far is all about the shootings in the U.S.
Yeah.
And I remember talking, at that point I started doing more crowd work with people where I talked to the people in the UK about their relationship to guns. I didn't know that most cops in the UK don't carry guns. I talked to people who they'd never owned a gun, and I am a gun owner. I don't have it in LA, but I got a gun when I was 12 years old, I got a gun for Christmas. You
Well,
know?
that's
Yeah.
Texas.
That's Texas for you.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's a shotgun. It's at my parents' house still. And so it's fun. Like, I thought, I was like, this one piece seems to be a big element of the set. And it was also the jokes that I think walked the line the most of being funny enough to merit how dark the joke was, which that's one of my favorite things to do about like playing with expectations is I can get away with some really dark stuff because I don't look like I would say that kind of stuff, I think. But there's one thing I really learned from Roast Battle, which is like anything can be funny, but you have to make sure that the joke itself is good enough to merit how dark or mean it actually is.
Yeah.
And so that material, I was the most proud of that stuff on that album. And I was shopping around ideas for the thing, and then I was like, oh, you know what would actually be a hilarious name is Good Guy with a Gun. Because that's, like, if you look at me, you would probably think, oh, he's a good guy with a gun. And so that felt like the right thing to do.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Have you ever worked with Amy Shanker?
No, I just met Amy one of the more recent times I came to Austin.
Okay.
But I've never worked with her or done any shows with her.
Okay. She does really dark stuff where she has learned to walk that line. She was a school teacher who dealt with school shootings like firsthand.
Oh, wow.
And we had a really, really long conversation as part of our interview where we talked about, there are people that try to do that, but they don't have the background, the training, the practice of figuring out exactly how to properly walk that line about talking stuff that most people would be like, why are you trying to make a joke out of this? This is tragic. This is too difficult to listen to. But if you come at it with like some actual experience and practice and working it out, you can pull it off. And she's one of those examples of people that, has that ability to pull it off. So just you talking about that and like being poised to pull it off, it's not a given. An open micer should not try to talk about, a shooting until they actually have figured out what works with different audiences and that kind of background.
I feel like there's something, I see this in a lot of different kinds of comedy scenes. And I certainly, I think, was guilty of this. I think a lot of open micers are guilty of this. When you're starting out, you don't know necessarily what will work for you. You're sort of telling the kinds of jokes that maybe you saw other people who you liked telling.
Yeah.
And you also, I think, are more, I certainly will say this about myself, I was more inclined to get a shocked reaction than a laugh, because I didn't know the difference.
Yeah.
It sounds close enough on stage that I was like, yeah, this is it. And I'm not like I was doing crazy dark stuff when I first started out, but I was doing like a lot more dirty jokes when I was starting out. And I've found there's a way, as you figure out what works for you on stage and what you're actually capable of pulling off as a writer, as a performer, then you can really hone in on the kinds of topics and subject matter that you can cover on stage and have it still feel true to you.
Yeah.
Like, I remember I did, there was a very brief moment in time this year where I was teaching a comedy class at a place that did open mics in LA. And basically the way the class worked, it was just like an open workshop where like you come on, I would have everybody do like a writing exercise for a little bit, and then everybody would do 5 minutes of whatever they were working on, and then we would discuss their set afterwards. And there was a guy who went up and he did 5 minutes of all very dark jokes, like Jeselnik style dark jokes, right? And none of them were working. None of them were good. And he also did not seem to have like the confidence behind those jokes too, right? Which you watch Anthony Jeselnik, supreme
No shortage.
confidence, no shortage. The part of why his set works so well is because not just because the writing is so airtight, but because the way he delivers those jokes
Yep.
is so powerfully confident and forceful, in just the way where you're just like you can't help but be sucked in and then bowled over by the punchlines. But I remember talking to him on stage. Was like, all right, who do you like? And he was like, I really like Anthony Jeselnik. And I was like, of course you do. I called that one from a mile away. And I was like, here's the thing. So what this guy was doing, it did not feel true to him at all. It felt like he was just doing dark stuff just to get the reaction of like, oh, you're being dark. Oh my God, I can't believe he said that.
Yeah.
And hoping to get the laugh that's like, oh man, right? Which then I was like, okay, if you want to go dark, maybe it's a good idea to consider some elements of your personal life that are sort of fucked up that like you can make jokes about instead of clearly inventing things that I'm not going to buy into.
Yeah.
And so then we talked it out a little bit, and he was like, oh yeah, I guess I did have some like actually fucked up things that happened in my childhood that I could be joking about. And I was like, then go that. I want to hear that stuff first, because right now, I mean, listen, who knows what's going to happen, but right now you're not a good enough joke writer to go this dark and still have it be funny, because you just don't have that experience yet. It takes time to learn how to do that stuff very well.
Right.
And I think you can get to it. You can get to that place. But I do think it helps to, give yourself a little bit of a break. If something's not working, you don't have to keep hammer at the thing that's not working and assume that eventually you'll be able to get it to work.
Yeah. Oh, that's great. Yay, you.
Yeah.
And now that comic is Anthony Jeselnik. No, just kidding.
Well, he's Hispanic, so he's going to be Antonio Jeselnik, if anything.
There we go. All right.
Antonio Jeselnik.
That's awesome. Okay, well, 45-ish minutes into it, we're going to have our intermission. No, this goes pretty quick. So this is a card game. Where Should We Begin by Esther Perel. She's like this world-renowned psychologist.
Yeah, storyteller lady. Yeah.
And so she developed this card game. It's all open-ended questions. And so I've got 2 cards here, randomly selected from the pile. You're going to point to one of them.
Okay.
And I will read that one to you after you read the one that you didn't pick to me.
Okay.
So which one do you pick?
I'm going to pick this one.
That one. Okay, so I will read this one. You read that one to me, and we'll see what kind of...
A story I tell about myself that isn't entirely true.
Oh, a story I tell about... Gosh.
Let's get all Hassan Minaj with it.
Oh,
Where
God.
are you telling emotional truths that are not actual truths? Where are you getting like literally every comedian?
Oh, my God. Yeah. I once interviewed Howie Mandel. No, but I actually did interview Howie Mandel. I'm not a really good liar. I'm a terrible liar. So
Oh, really?
Yeah, so I can't think of...
Even white lies?
Oh, I'm sure I do white lies because I don't want to hurt people's feelings.
Mm-hmm. I was not available to podcast with you this one time, Jay. I'm so sorry.
Because I had a coffee date with a friend. No. Oh, man. I'm sure I have told some kind of story that has... What happens, though, I will say this. What happens as you get older, so you've got, 30 years ahead of you before you get to as old as dirt as I am, you will have evolving memories of things.
Oh, sure.
So, I literally did go to school at the same time as Matthew McConaughey was at UT.
Oh, wow.
And, I've never come out and said, oh, I remember hanging out with him. But what I will say is really close because Robert Rodriguez was going to school at the same time.
Okay.
And I do actually vividly remember reading his comic strip that he developed back then.
Oh, he had a comic strip in the student paper?
Yeah.
Okay.
So I think, oh well, I was a copy editor at the Texan for a while, so therefore by 6 degrees of separation, I know Robert Rodriguez.
Okay.
So
there you
I guess
go.
that's kind of a close thing.
That counts.
Yeah.
That's a story.
Yeah. Yeah. And then for a while, my son was at a Montessori school, and his kids were also attending. And that is 100% true. And we got invited to a birthday party of one of the kids, and I so desperately wanted him to be there at this party, but it was at Chuck E. Cheese. So I'm like, damn it, he's never going to show up at a Chuck E. Cheese. So,
Absolutely not.
Yeah, there we go. All right. All right, Jay, yours is a time I admitted I was wrong.
Ooh. This is a great
You're
tie-in.
a newlywed now.
I'm a newlywed, yeah. No, this is a great tie-in to my game show, Wrong, a Fucked Up Game Show. Where we all want to be wrong all the time. We celebrate being wrong. It's okay to be wrong. And I do admit that I'm wrong here and there. It does happen in my relationship more often. I feel... This is something that I don't think my wife is a huge fan of about me. But I am somebody... we have like bits that we do around the house, and this is a benign. I'm admitting I'm wrong because it's me deliberately trying to fuck with her head. So we do like the crossword before bed sometimes. That's one of our like go-tos. And I will very frequently. We have different approaches to the crossword. Where like I will much rather try and put in a word that I think fits the thing, even if I'm not totally sure about it. And so I'm just like shooting from the hip a lot, and then I'm like, listen, we can fix it later if it doesn't work. It's fine. It's not a big deal. And she's like, no, we have to leave it open. And I'm like, no. And so there have been plenty of times where I have like said something that is for sure wrong, or like invented a word that because I'm very convincing. I invent a word that she thinks is real, and then she puts it in there, and then it turns out to not be the word, because either it's absolutely not the word, or it's actually not a real word at all, and I just tricked her into believing it's a real word. And then I have to admit, no, I was wrong. And she rolls her eyes at me, and that's my favorite thing to make her do. So there you go.
I like that one. That's a good way of admitting a wrong, as opposed to I once, murdered somebody. But why would you do that? Well, I guess you have the marital privilege
to murder.
I mean, the spouse doesn't have to reveal that.
Oh yeah, no, that's a good point.
Yeah, so
I think is that the way it is in California?
Oh, I don't know. California's got its own.
So if I'm going to murder somebody, we have to do it in Texas, and she can't. Then we're good.
No, because I watched a lot of Law and Order, and that's in New York, so it must be like if.
So when I move to New York, then it's okay.
Yeah.
All right. Thank you for joining us on our legal advice segment here on Comedy Wham Presents.
You are a newlywed, and one of the funnest things that has come out is you have a TikTok video that you've posted that is, by my standards, is viral. And it talks about the timing of your wedding day.
Oh, yeah. This is...
I mean, he is haunting you, I think.
A little bit. Yeah. This is actually... I'm really excited because this is going to be a bit on the album that I finally... I worked it out. I'd been doing it in L.A. I'd only done it really in L.A. I did a little bit in like San Diego and Orange County, and I wanted to do it. I was excited to do it in a place that's more red than L.A.
Yeah.
But yeah, Donald Trump got almost assassinated on my wedding day, and it happened during our wedding ceremony, and nobody knew. This is actually to the question that I asked you, a story I tell about myself that isn't entirely true. So in the bit, I say we found out about that somebody tried to assassinate Donald Trump after our wedding, and nobody knew. I said everybody had their phones off or on silent, and like 30 minutes later, somebody came up to us, and they said, Jay, somebody shot Donald Trump. And I said, wow, not on the registry, but way to improvise. We asked for a magic bullet. I thought we were getting a blender. Crazy. But there was actually one person who did know. It was in her wedding party. Her best friend Justin was the man of honor in her wedding party, and he was turning off his phone, and he had gotten the notification about the assassination attempt, and he gasped in line. And one of the other bridesmaids turned around to him and said, "What?" And he said nothing and turned his phone off. So he, I think, was the only person who might have known that it had just happened.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
But yeah, and that happened. And I mean, nobody talked about it except for the people who came up to us and told us at the bar that it had happened. It was the only time it came up all day. Everybody was on their best behavior. The comics table, they were all like, I saw them all on their phones, like clearly looking at Twitter and like looking at memes on Instagram about the assassination attempt. But everybody, besides that, everybody else, very chill.
Good.
So that was good.
That's good. Yeah.
Yeah.
And then you were handed a gift with some material.
Oh my God. As soon as it happened, and this is the other, like, we went through that entire day, like, somebody brought it up to us and we were like, huh. And then we were so caught up in the wedding again, we didn't really think about it again for the rest of the day.
Yeah.
And then it was literally like at the very, very end of the night, we were in bed, we were about to go to sleep, and then we were like, oh my God, we should look at the news. I bet the news is crazy right now. And we looked, and then, you know, we spent probably another like 15 minutes just on our phones, just scrolling, being like catching up on all of the crazy shit that had been happening over the course of the day. But yeah, I mean, that's, you know, I will say, I've heard a handful of Donald Trump assassination attempt jokes, but I'm going to put it down. I feel like I have probably one of the best ones that will happen because I don't know how many other people have news happen during their wedding that you can actually turn into a bit. So I'm going to I'm going to wear that badge of honor.
Yeah. Yeah. Very good.
Yeah.
So you had a clear motivation for recording your first album. Did you have a similar motivation or a different motivation because now we're 5 years after recording your debut album, for motivation for recording this one?
Yeah, I actually did think that it was going to be, and it's funny, I thought it was going to be a different kind of album than this one's going to be. Like, I thought thematically everything was going to be way different. And I started basically at the beginning of last year, I started putting up a monthly show for a few months where I was doing an hour just to like put a bunch of material up. And I did 3 shows of that, and one of those shows I had some colleagues from my writing work in the reality and game show world come to a show. And the hour wound up being mostly about working in reality TV because I have a lot of material that's about those jobs because they're really weird jobs. There's so much strange stuff that happens on those sets, and I just really want to have that kind of be its own thing.
Yeah.
And so I was like, okay, I actually feel like if I'm going to do that material, I need to spend more time developing it and maybe have some more to say about it. So I think what will be better is if I put that down and let it be on the back burner and simmer for a bit, because I have all this relationship stuff that's happening and I have all this wedding stuff that is starting to happen, because at that point we had just gotten engaged. We had been to other people's weddings. I was starting to really observe weddings in a comedic way because I'd been to so many, and I was going to ones that really, really had some weird stuff happening at these weddings. And I was like, there's something I think that will be much more sensible if I'm talking about like relationship stuff and particularly weddings and marriage for the majority of the next album. So when it became apparent that that was the situation that I was finding myself in, I was like, okay. And I booked a headlining date to record the album. I had to book the date at Dallas Comedy Club, and then I started to put out places where I could do longer sets and work it out again. And I didn't feel like I needed to run all of it all at once the way that I did before the first album, just because I had worked out bits and pieces of this material in sort of like 10 or 20 minute chunks at a time in and around LA. And so I was like, you know what? All of this stuff I think will make sense. It will work thematically. Let's take this and let's put this down as the next album.
Wow.
And I'm really glad that I got to do the Valve one last time to run all of it together just to make sure that my hypothesis was correct about everything fitting in one spot.
Yeah.
Because it does. So that's good news.
Good.
Yeah.
Are you going to call it Shotgun Wedding? 'Cause, if you want to keep that theme.
That's a good idea. My working title is Marriage Material because it's a little silly wordplay, but I actually really like Shotgun Wedding. That's funny.
Well, I will anxiously await the release.
We'll see how it goes. Yeah.
Is this being done DIY as well, or are you under a recording?
I'm paying for everything out of pocket, so that part's DIY. Last album I released through a label, so we're talking to the label now to see if they can do the release again. If not, we'll see what happens.
Yeah, okay. But hopefully by the end of the year, early next year?
It's tough to know with album release schedules.
Yeah.
The other thing, and I will say this, is that we are we're gonna tape it on video also. So I don't know what exactly I'll do with the video yet. I don't know if I'll release it. In my mind, I'm not thinking of this as a special because I do feel like that there's so many people who are doing the DIY special thing too, and maybe this is my own other hump that I have to get over. But I'm taping it, and I'm I don't know what's going to happen with the timing of the album release or video stuff, but maybe once it's all said and done, once I get a little bit more idea of the contract of wherever it'll wind up going, then I can figure out what to do with the video. Yeah. Whether or not, it's just releasing it all as clips or putting it on YouTube in conjunction with the audio release somewhere. But yeah, hopefully... when I recorded my album in 2019, it was a year before it was released, just because label schedules are quite worked out.
Yeah.
So hopefully we can get it to be a little bit tighter this time. But, we'll see. We'll see what happens.
Yeah, cool. So you're recording this coming weekend. So we're recording September 2nd. You're recording on the 8th?
On the 5th.
No, on the 5th. So this is coming out on the 8th. And you'll be in your relaxation mode. I'll
be back in LA. I will have just finished recording, and then we have another wrong happening. We just started, or about to start rather, doing shows at the Comedy Store on the first Saturday of the month. We have a late night slot there now, so we're at 11:45 p.m. So by the time you're listening to this album, I might still be asleep. We'll see. We'll see what happens.
So how did Wrong come about?
So I always loved game shows. I watched, besides Comedy Central, probably the network I watched the most was Comedy Central, then Adult Swim, and then the Game Show Network. And in college, I worked as the host of our on-campus game show on ESTV, Elon Student TV. I worked that for 3 years, and I produced and wrote questions and that kind of stuff. And then all of that, never touched anything with game shows again after that once I started getting really into comedy. And then after COVID, there's this theater that I did some stuff at. Actually, it's where I recorded my first album. It's called the Pack Theater in LA.
Okay.
And they approached me. They asked me to do a roast show. They were wondering if I'd be interested in doing some kind of a roast show. And I was not. But I was like, maybe there is something that I can do. If they're approaching me and asking me to produce a show, I'm sure there's something I can come up with. And I remember I had also started exploring doing clown classes at that point.
Ooh, fun.
Edinburgh Fringe has a ton of clown performers.
Yeah. And
seeing them maybe be like, oh, this is really interesting. There's something here that I like that I maybe can figure out how to incorporate into the way I already do comedy. And I looked into some classes, and one of the classes I took, they told us, all right, come in with an idea for a bit. And I remember just writing down possible options. One of the things I wrote down was fucked up game show host, because I just imagined a mean game show host. And I remember I didn't do that in the class, but then I was like, oh, maybe I could do a mean game show where the whole point of the game show is, I say it's a fucked up game show, and it's not, it's definitely it's a dark show. We're asking comedians to do dark and dirty stuff, but I think really the core of it is it's fucked up because we are literally fucking with the comedians, and it is a game show that is hard for the comedians to do because we're putting them in a tough position. So one of our signature rounds that we have, we call it in Tweetment. We go through everybody's old social media.
Ooh.
We find stuff that they said, we blank out the words, and then we make them guess what they said based on we have 2 fake options and 1 real option every time. So, like, nobody ever finds out what we found on them. We found stuff that people thought they deleted. It's crazy. And there's other games that are sort of like in that vein where we're putting them in an uncomfortable position and making them wriggle their way out.
Yeah.
And I think, the idea of, like, how can I fuck with people who are my friends and who are my colleagues, but in a way where it feels sort of in the, like, roast vein of, like, we're doing it out of the way Roast Battle was, at least. It's, like, out of a sense of camaraderie.
Right.
And there's definitely a really tight-knit group of people who I think you get closer with people by roasting them. Mm-hmm. And so, because you have to do all this research on people. And so I was like, what can I do that will feel fun like that, but also be maybe a little bit on the, like, meaner, darker side? And so I talked to my buddy Tyler, who was my North Carolina friend who lived in LA, and I started putting this idea together, and he was my announcer, sidekick guy, and I was the host, and then the show just developed from there, and we figured it out in obscurity for like a year, which was great. Mm-hmm. It was really actually very nice to have, like, nobody coming to the shows, but the theater's still putting us up once a month, so we could figure out what the fuck we were doing. And now we're touring it, and we have a spot at the Comedy Store regularly. We just, like I said, we just got back from Edinburgh Fringe. But it all comes from the genesis of, like,
amazing.
I love these old game shows, and especially, you ever watch old episodes of, like, Match Game or Family Feud? Like, Family Feud now, I think Steve Harvey is probably the closest to, like, a classic game show host, where Steve Harvey is just exasperated at the things that these people are saying. And I love how much he shows it on his face.
Yes.
But I remember watching, like, Match Game back in the old episodes they would air on Game Show Network, or, like, old Newlywed Game episodes, or Family Feud. And these hosts, like, they really said some mean stuff to these contestants. Yeah. And even, like, Alex Trebek's one clip of him, like, roasting that lady who loved nerdcore hip hop, and that going so viral. And I remember watching that and being like, damn, Alex Trebek is going hard. This is what we need. So all of that stuff, I think, sort of made this cocktail of, like, how can I be a mean, fucked up game show host?
Yeah. Oh, that's brilliant. And
yeah.
I love the idea that it's going back to, like, the germ of something that you loved and felt, at the infancy of your comedy career. So that's very cool. Because I've interviewed so many people, it reminds me of the conversation with Josh Adam Myers. Who,
I love J-Mo.
Was ready to hang up the hat as a stand-up, but decided, his love of music, he decided, well, let me try this idea. Mm-hmm. And the goddamn Comedy Jam was born, and it's now, it's at Moon Tower. It's a staple of Moon Tower. He takes that show all over the country, all over the world. Mm-hmm. And, it was his original love.
Yeah.
So prediction corner. I need to see fucked up game show at Moon Tower.
I would love to take it to Moon Tower.
Yeah.
Yeah, and we're trying to take it to some more festivals and stuff. So hopefully you will see it at more festivals soon.
Nice. Very nice.
That's what we're hoping for.
Yeah. Is there anything we haven't talked about that you want people to know about you?
I feel like we've covered so much.
Yeah.
We've covered all the stuff that I do.
Yeah.
I mean, if you like reality shows, watch reality TV. But I don't know how much longer I'll be working in those. The whole industry's collapsing. So we'll see what's going on with that.
I'm a Love Is Blinder, so I love that whole.
What a show! I've got a couple friends. There's like all the competition shows. There is, because there's different areas of reality TV, which I think is really interesting. There's like a bunch of people who like reality competition stuff, but there's also subsets of like dating shows, and then there's like the shows where it's basically like I'm trying to get a new job where I hate my job so much I want to go on TV and try and get a different job, and then there's the whole extra the Bravo Celebrity side of it, where it's like the Real Housewives universe and the Vanderpump Rules and the Summer House and all of that stuff. And now there's shows where they're like taking all of those worlds and putting them in the same boat with like the Traitors. And I love reality TV. I think it's so fascinating. It feels so, it's just like such an interesting peek into the psyche of human beings doing reality shows. And I love the way that, like, especially in the most recent years, I think there's some great comedic play with reality shows. Obviously, I think Nathan Fielder's work is absolutely brilliant. You ever watch How To with John Wilson?
I haven't, no.
Okay. I have homework for you,
okay,
Valerie, which is watch How To with John Wilson.
Okay.
So it's on HBO.
Okay.
They only did 3 seasons of it. He just wrapped. It's produced by Nathan Fielder, so you know it's going to be good stuff. Basically, the premise of the show is John is a documentarian by trade, but all of his documentaries start off, his whole thing, it's called, they all start with like How To X. Okay. So one of the most notable episodes that I remember of season 2 is How to Learn to Taste Wine, I think is what it's called. It might be How to Taste Wine, but it's something in that kind of vein. And all of them start with like a simple premise. And the documentary stuff, he's like shooting, he lives in New York City, so he's finds somehow all of the like insane stuff that really can only happen in a gigantic megacity like New York City. Just the broad swath of humanity. He sees all this stuff and he somehow captures crazy shit on video and puts it into his show. Okay. And makes it all work thematically. But then he starts off with like, this is what an episode is like. This is how you do the thing. Like How to Taste Wine, it starts off, he's like, I'm going to this party. I brought something to drink, but nobody drank it at the party. And everybody seems to be drinking this wine, so I got to learn how to be some more sophisticated. So he goes to like wine shops and stuff, and he learns how to learns about taste stuff. But then he winds up like in Florida at the house of the guy who owns Bang energy drinks, and he just like walks up to this guy's house while they're having a baby shower for his wife, and he's like, I'm with HBO, can I come in? And they're like,
oh my god,
sure, HBO's here to film a documentary on us. Wow. So it's like every episode takes crazy turns like that, and it's just like, it's so brilliant comedically, but it also has some of the most like, it's like high art, and I think that is so tough to pull off in reality television. But that's what I think, this is the distinction between like reality and nonfiction. But I do think that there's like something in there. So yeah, maybe keep an eye out for whatever. After this album, I'm going to be leaning very hard into trying to figure out whatever the fuck any of that means. Yeah. Reality and comedy.
Have you heard of GOAT, the Daniel Tosh reality show?
No.
I binge watched this thing. It's on Amazon, and it brings so many elements together. There's the competition element. There's the it's all reality TV stars in quotes, and it's, Daniel Tosh is behind it, and he's the host, and you know how he is.
Yeah.
It brings a lot of really good elements together. So, and it's a quick watch. So watch at least one episode. That's my homework for you, Jay.
I will do that.
Yeah.
I will do that homework.
Yeah.
That sounds fun.
Yeah. Okay, so are you ready for your closing question?
Yeah.
One word to describe your future.
Oh my God. Married. Oh wait, I thought there was going to be.
Uh-oh.
I thought there was going to be a symbol. There we go. Shotgun wedding.
The theme. All right. That is a wrap on Comedy Wham Presents Jay Light. Jay, tell us where we can find you on social media and promote your projects.
You can find me at Diet J on all social platforms, at Wrong Game Show if you want to follow that and see when we're coming to your city next and see clips from the show. Please subscribe to my YouTube channel too. That's where we put full episodes of Wrong out. We also have that as available as a podcast. We're going to start re-uploading episodes of that imminently. So you should see the first couple of our new episodes coming out right around the time this drops. So go subscribe wherever you get podcasts to Wrong. I think we call it a dark comedy game show to make it past the censors on Apple Podcasts. But yeah, go take a look.
Okay. Fantastic. This has been Comedy. Oh, no, wait. No, that's not my closing. Hold on. I've been doing this 8 years and I still have to have my script because otherwise. Okay. We hope you've enjoyed learning about how Jay got to be the comedic genius that you heard today just as much as I have. This has been Comedy Wham Presents Jay Light. I'm Valerie, and that's funny. Thank you, Jay.
Thanks, Valerie.
We finally did it.
Yay.